Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more they all know. Vice, Pyro, and friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 39, the podcast about our lives and love of pop culture. I'm your host, VyseTheBold, and this is...
PyroJackFrost. I'm not actually used to going first.
And I'm OldManStompy, taking over for Lotus Prince this week.
Yeah, Lotus Prince is stepping out because there's some big things that... big quote-unquote things that I and OldManStompy want to talk about this week.
Yeah, it's kind of like both of your total jams this week. So I was really excited to have you both on. First of all, because I wanted to have the satisfaction of hijacking Lotus's YouTube feed and not actually have him on his own feed, which is hilarious to me. But also to have you both on during your most exciting times, pretty much. I mean,
yeah.
A new Persona doesn't come around very often. The last one was a PS2 game, I don't
remember when Golden came out. Golden must have come out around like 2008, 2010.
Yeah, and that was a heavy edition or a special edition version of a game that already existed, though. So, it had a lot of extra content, but it was still essentially, an old game from PS2 era. Mm-hmm. So it's great that, we skipped an entire era, essentially, with the PS3. I mean, they released it on PS3, right?
Yeah, it's on PS3, and 5. I think in terms of skipping a generation, they did and did not, because Persona 5 is on PS3 and PS4, but also Catherine, which is not a Persona game, but the engine they're using in 5 was the one that they used for Catherine, so that was like their test of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
but go ahead.
So there's also the extensions of Persona 4 that made it onto PS3 and Vita, like the Arenas and the Dancing All Night, which are spin-offs, but they're technically canon.
Technically,
yeah, and there's
are.
Persona Q as well.
That's not canon, though.
Yeah. Well, I only care about things that are canon. I never play anything that isn't canon.
Well, you play Breath of the Wild, who the hell knows if that's canonical or not at this point.
That's canon with Ganon.
It's kind of funny because they released that Hyrule Historia to kind of give an explanation of the story, and then the next game they released kind of just fucked it all up.
Right.
Well, I think with that one, they kind of allude to it being in the future of Twilight Princess, at least. But I kind of forget.
Who cares, though?
What?
I mean, really, who cares? You don't.
It's not supposed to be.
I believe so. Twilight Princess, I thought, was before the big timeline split in Historia, and I thought that it's supposed to be at the end of Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 are the end of the Child Link timeline in the split in Ocarina of Time, and I think that Breath of the Wild is supposed to be, at least based on the fact that things like the Rito exist, like the
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
too.
the very, very far future of Wind Waker.
Yeah, it's probably the one that's furthest in the timeline.
Yes.
If there is one, but I think the original Zelda was, or the Zelda 2 was supposed to be the one that was furthest for a while.
Right.
But whatever. So anyway, OldManStompy, why don't you take us away here? Or did you want to go first?
No, I just wanted to say about the Hyrule Historia, not to anyway.
No. Go ahead.
Before I start my bit, I just wanted to say that I like how people want to give a connection between games. It's the same like with Persona, and this will lead into what I want to talk about, that yes, technically all the Persona games are in the same universe, but who really cares? I mean, they're good games / stories in their own right. There doesn't really need to be a connection unless there's been an explicit connection between games. It doesn't really matter. It's more like a cool thing. I can see why people would like it, but anyway, that's just what I wanted to say to lead into the fact that I am playing Persona 5. It's finally out. I've been waiting for this for, a long, long time, but more recently, with the past, week to a month, I've been like sweating bullets, just waiting for it to come out. playing Horizon Zero Dawn and beating that, and then having like a week to 2 weeks just not being able to play anything because I know that I won't be able to get involved in anything until 5 came out. So I started playing that. So far, I love it. But then again, it's like anyone saying that they love something that they've loved forever. I'm not saying that it's perfect, obviously, but it is a great game. The style is crazy. It's interesting. It's fun. I'm going to talk about a lot more of it probably later in the week when I get more time with it. But I'm about, I don't want to say 24 hours in, and I actually was sick one day last week. So I was able to play it all day long.
Yeah. I'm glad that you were able to get some nice couch time.
Yeah, it just happened to be
up.
that I was really sick that one day. So I mean, I guess I thought I should use that time to play a lot of Persona 5. It's cool because it takes a lot of the good things from all the other Persona games and even some mainline Megaten games, and brings them together in a way that is very well done. The dungeons are less random, or not random at all now. They're definitely designed in a certain way. There's puzzles in the dungeons now. The battles are a little bit more interesting, I would say, because there's more going on. Also, it's a little bit harder, I would say, than 3 and 4 were.
Really?
Yeah, because in 3 and 4, when you beat a battle, there's a chance that a bunch of cards pop up and you pick one, and that could be like a new persona that you get. Whereas in 5, you can only get new personas by getting people in battle to join you. But doing that reduces the experience you get. Whereas in 4, you would get all the experience from killing the enemy, and you could possibly get a persona. Whereas in 5, you have to choose, do I want full experience and money, or do I want a new persona? So it's a give and take a little bit more than the previous games were.
So
gotcha.
Did the older games, like the non-Persona mainline SMT games, work like that? Because I have a vague recollection that was something that you had to worry about in like Nocturne and Strange Journey and...
Yeah, so I don't remember much about Nocturne or Strange Journey, but definitely in 4, the newest mainline one, it was like that, where if you talk to the demons to get them to join you, you wouldn't get the experience. You would get some experience, and actually there were abilities you could buy that would allow you to get more experience from conversing with demons. But Persona 3 and 4, and even I would say maybe 2, it's been a while, but I think 2 you got the full experience for talking to demons also.
I kind of, from an unlikely place, am getting a little bit more okay with a lot of the ideas with the SMT games. I know this is kind of funny, but Zelda kind of helped me be less anal with disposable things, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You realize very quickly if you try to retain everything in Breath of the Wild, that's an exercise in frustration. You're just going to make yourself mad. So just use whatever you have for whatever's best for the situation. You'll get something better later.
Yeah.
And so that made me I think has made me okay with the concept of like losing and experimenting with my demons and monsters in an SMT games, because I used to have a big problem with, oh man, if I evolve this, I won't have many opportunities, to get it right the next time. When actually the opposite is very much the truth.
Yeah.
You have plenty of opportunities to catch another one and then merge that with something else later.
Yeah, and like the last thing I want to talk about before moving on from this is I felt the same way, because there are definitely some personas or demons, either the same thing basically, that I really like the art style of, but if you stick with them for too long, you're going to be severely underpowered because their skills can only go so far. And I kind of felt like, you know what, the important part about these demons is their abilities. So what they look like really doesn't matter at all. And it's actually kind of cool how 5 does that, where technically, if you have just been fighting enemies and haven't been trying to get them to join you, the first time you learn how to fuse demons or fuse personas, you're forced to get rid of your starting persona. So it kind of lets you realize that not to get attached to these for too long. And he actually talks to you and says, you're basically along the lines of paraphrasing, you're going to kill me now, but I'll come back. Basically, he's going to be the ultimate persona for the main character. So it kind of lets you not get attached to them, to realize that you really should be using them for their abilities, not to for what they look like. Because, for instance, my favorite persona is Jack Frost, but he's a level 11 demon. Even if I kept him the whole time, he's going to get just not powerful enough and not be able to keep up with the rest of my guys.
So, of course, Atlas being who they are and being notorious for being like player unfriendly in really funny ways, I do recall that in Nocturne, it's the only game that punishes you for doing this because, you know, the starting persona or demon in a lot of Megaten games is the pixie. And in Nocturne, if you carry the pixie with you or something that you fuse with the pixie all the way to the very, very, very end of the game,
yes,
it like reincarnates into like a level 99 pixie that learns all the most powerful magic in the game. And you'd never notice unless somebody got to the end of the game and you got to this door that you couldn't open unless you had that pixie. And like, so you just have to learn to live with it. Like, I do like that these newer games seem to be a little bit more intuitive. Like, they're not necessarily as like they don't make me as anxious to make me feel like I have to be reading a guide like every step of the way to get the most out of the game. The same as Vice. I feel more relaxed playing these more recent Megaten games.
I also noticed another thing about the games. It's that I've heard like a lot of things from people that have been playing it that there's like a ton of attention to detail. Like you can even do your laundry in the game.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be an important part eventually, but there is a laundromat, and I think there are items you get that if you do the laundry, you can get something better back.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's on the level of like Steel Battalion having like windshield wipers.
Yeah.
You know, a specific button on a controller for windshield wipers, which is hilarious.
Yeah, well, I want to say that, just like OldManStompy mentioned, the first not starting demon you get is Pixie. So you're technically supposed to sacrifice her and your main guy to make a new one. But yeah, the cool thing about Pixie is at the end of... So in, I think it was Digital Devil Saga, the main character of Nocturne was a hidden boss. And one of his demons that he used was that Uber Pixie.
Oh, you're right. I remember this.
Yes, so that's pretty cool. So the other thing I want to I'll be able to talk about Persona 5 later, but I kind of want to move it along, is OldManStompy and I, we were at a party this weekend that a bunch of board games were being played, and one that I brought that I heard from another podcast I listened to / website called Shut Up and Sit Down. They review a lot of board games. It is called Monikers, and it's a cool not new I would say, but a cool party game in the sense of you have a stack of, I want to say thousands of both fictional, historical, and realistic figures. Like you have Yoshi, Frogger, but you also have O.J. Simpson, Johnny Cochran, Joan of Arc, a Civil War reenactor, Star Wars kid, like just any kind of person from pop culture or history or whatever. And the way it works is everyone grabs 10 random cards or however many, and you keep half of them. Then you shuffle all the rest of those deck cards. So let's say you have 6 people, and you get 10 cards each. You choose to keep 5 of them and put them in a main deck. That's going to be 30 cards. So what happens is you're teams of 2, and each of you the teams each take turns trying to have the rest of their team guess how many cards as possible. So OldManStompy, chime in if you can explain this better than I can. So what happens is, so it starts off, let's say that my team is going first. I have the stack of 30 cards. I'm looking at the first card. I try to say whatever I can without using the name of the person for the rest of my team to get it. If they get it, then we get that card. If not, then I can skip it to move on to the next card. And we have 60 seconds to guess as many as possible. Once the 60 seconds are up, the next team goes with the rest of the cards. And it keeps alternating until all the cards have been guessed. But what makes it more interesting is that after you've guessed all the cards, you tally up your points, you put all the cards back in the deck, and the second round you can only say one word clue. So, for instance, the one we had today was we had O.J. Simpson. So the clue we said was he killed his wife, but not really. Or whatever we said. And then someone guessed O.J. Simpson. Good, so that team got the point. The second round, we can only use one word, so I think I did it, and I said glove. So with one word, you know that O.J. Simpson's in the deck.
So on top of that, to complicate things further, one of the cards we had was Johnny Cochran, OJ's lawyer. You know, and he's the one who's really notorious for that phrase, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit, about OJ's glove. So it made things still a little bit more difficult in an unexpected way. But since on the second round, you already know all the cards in the deck, then you know that there's still only two options. It's hard on the first round through because you don't know what's there. The second and third round, things get a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, because the first round... Sorry, go.
I guess the only thing that you could do is you can reference like the South Park like Chewbacca defense, because like I can't think of honestly anything else that Johnny Cochran like you can associate him with other than that.
But it's like the first round is every team is trying to feel out what all the cards are, and then after that first round, everyone knows if they're paying attention all 30 cards, let's say, in the deck. So the second time through, like another instance, we had a dead horse, the Trojan horse, and the Horse Whisperer were three cards that we were playing with. So the first time through, you could say like someone who knows what equestrians are thinking. So that's Horse Whisperer. Or you could say they use this a wooden version of this to get into whatever city it was. So you say Trojan horse. Then the third one, you could say it's when you talk for something. Yeah, talk for something for too long, and it gets really annoying. It's like beating a dead horse. The second time through, I could just go, nay. You know that there's 3 horses in the deck, so just guess all 3 of them. You're going to get it right.
Yeah.
So So even though the second time through you can only use one word, you know the cards that are going to be in the deck. So you can better go through that. Then the third round, you can only use... it's charades. So you can only use gestures and maybe noises to help them get the deck. So you're learning the cards as you go. So you know the only 30 to whatever 50 cards are in the deck, so you have to memorize them. But it keeps getting harder and harder as you go.
So what I kind of like about it is that every game evolves as a unique experience. So what we found happened to us was that since the person who's giving the clues rotates around the team, if you try to give a clue, you know, and the other people don't get it, but then they see the card when it's their turn, they realize, oh, that's what that person was trying to do. You know, they'll give you that same clue or a reference to that clue to help you, and then eventually it became an in-joke. Like one of our cards was the California Raisins, and one of them was Harriet Tubman. So someone did the Underground Railroad like a choo-choo train, you know, to try to get someone to guess Harriet Tubman, and someone just randomly guessed California Raisins because they had no idea what she was doing. Just totally missed what the clue was all about and forgot that Harriet Tubman was in the deck. So, of course, the next time when that person got California Raisins, she started doing the choo-choo train in reference to the complete miss that she had earlier in the game.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
so there's like a continuity to the game.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Yeah, it builds a continuity, and you get your in-jokes that you learn about the cards. And the best part is that if you play with some of the same people the next time in, like if we had California Raisins the next time we played, let's say, and I was playing with someone else who played that game, I could do the train, and someone might still understand what I'm referencing. So it's actually a really fun game. I heard about it, like I said, through that podcast I listened to, and I figured, hey, why don't we check it out? I was worried that there would be a lot of people in these decks that some of my friends wouldn't know. Like, there's some that I didn't know, like the historical figures or people in power and politics now that I wouldn't know, but that's what the whole point of, you get 10 cards and choose which 5 to keep, because it kind of whittles it down to the ones that you know people can do.
So that's exactly why I thought the game was so great as a party game. It's similar to Concepts. I don't remember if that's been talked about in this podcast before, but it's another game where you have to try to explain things to an audience based on clues on an image board instead of what Pyro discussed for Monikers. But in general, like, people will select different things based on their cultural or their personal backgrounds, and they'll bring different things to the table. Like, in Concept way, I never figured out how to describe Rio de Janeiro based on the available clues, but someone from with a South American background might know more about Rio de Janeiro to be able to describe it to other people. As an example, I also, in Monikers, one of the cards that I kept getting to select from that I never actually chose to put in the deck was the Prime Minister of Italy, who I don't know anything about, but someone else might be able to describe it better to us.
Yeah, so it's like our group might pick a lot of fictional characters or potentially pop culture icons that we would all know, whereas another group might pick a lot of celebrities or historical figures because that's what their group knows. So it lets you whittle it down, and they basically say in the rules that if you are getting a lot of cards that no one knows about, pick more cards to choose from, just to give you a better chance of getting cards that your group would know. So it tells you that, hey, you can remove rounds, add rounds, you can change things around. If you want to play with, like, if you're playing with 4 people, you can just say, you know what, why don't you all just pass it around, and no one wins, you just play for fun. So it really adds a lot of, you can modify it as much as you want, and much as it fits with your group. So yeah, that is my week.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is, and maybe next time we're all together, we could try it out. So that's my week. So OldManStompy, what about you?
So I did not play any Binding of Isaac this week. So those of you thirsting to find out how Lotus and I are doing on a long Binding of Isaac, you'll have to wait for the next time he's on the podcast. On the mobile side, since yep.
I actually played a little bit.
Oh.
But I'll go into that in my segment.
Oh, man, I really thought we could make it an entire podcast without talking about Binding of Isaac at all, but okay.
You brought it up. I wouldn't have talked about it unless you had.
I know, I shot myself in the foot, didn't I? But that's what Binding of Isaac is all about, right? It's about pain and misery and crying.
Talk about beating a dead horse.
All right, yeah. So, anyway, on my side, so I know, Pyro talks a lot about the mobile games that he played. I basically played one mobile game, which is Final Fantasy Record Keeper. I like it because it's a Final Fantasy themed game, and despite being a mobile game with gacha like every other mobile game, the gacha is equipment based rather than character based, and the characters, you basically can get them all pretty easily, and they tend to be really balanced. So it's pretty easy to assemble a team that's really powerful, containing all of your favorite Final Fantasy characters, and then to go through the content. And when I got into the game, I was really impressed by there's a very vibrant online community, does a lot of math crafting, and like there are people who can clear the content with like the weakest characters and only weak equipment by, you know, a very cautious and judicious use of the resources the game gives you for free. And I was always very impressed by that, and I used to tell myself, you know, if I, like, it doesn't matter if I have bad luck, you know, pulling equipment, you know, from the slot machine, basically. If these guys can beat all of the content of the game with bottom-tier equipment, then what's my excuse? I should just be a smarter player. And it brought me back to when I used to play, like, JRPGs all the time, and I used to, like, love reading guides and looking up tables and, like, min-maxing all my characters. And, like, over the long term, eventually, like, doing it every week got a little, like, a little too exhaustive for me. But I still thought the game was pretty fun, and I've been playing it now for almost 2 years. And I know it's been almost 2 years, because this week, last week, was the game's 2-year anniversary, and they released, like, a whole bunch of content and gave you a whole bunch of free stuff. And they also released Nemesis from Final Fantasy X, which people who played the game know that as the hardest optional boss in the original US and original Japanese version of Final Fantasy X. That you can only access in the Monster Arena. They released it as a super difficult optional boss. And if you beat it at the highest difficulty level, you would get, like, your team inscribed in a Hall of Fame on the the website. So I was able to do that. Of course, I've been playing for a long time, so I have a lot of good items anyway from the gacha, just because I've been playing for so long that I've been able to do enough free or discounted pulls in the machine that I have a lot of powerful equipment and a lot of powerful abilities. So yeah. I know, Dan, Pyro, you used to play this game too, so you have any thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I played that, and I played the other Final Fantasy mobile game, Xvius, and while I did have lots of fun with them, I think they, the whole gacha thing, whether or not you could beat it with just free stuff they give you and no normal stuff, it helped me realize that even though I love the Final Fantasy theming, I just think gacha games aren't my thing, because I get way too into them. And especially, I mean, let's say talking about now, I'm not going to play them because when I'm home, I want to play Persona 5. But it's tough because I want to like them because they're Final Fantasy games, but gacha games aren't my thing. I just can't deal with the randomness and the feeling that I need to play them every now and then to get the worth of everything that they give me. It kind of makes me think that the games that I would rather play as a theme would be I've been thinking of trying to get back into Final Fantasy XIV, because I guess MMOs would be my way of wanting a theme of things and a gacha game.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you in general. I'm also really tired of stamina-based games. I used to think it was useful at a time because, like, I do have somewhat of an addictive personality, and when I first started getting into stamina-based games, it was easy for me to say, oh, well, I can't play this game anymore. I can put it down and I can go do something else, you know, so I don't have to worry about it. But, no, like, now that I'm past that phase where I can manage my time a little bit more effectively, I just feel really frustrated, especially in Record Keeper. Like, my team is powerful enough and my, like, account is advanced enough that most content is easy, unless I produce self-imposed challenges for myself. So I find that a lot of the game is boring, and I'm sitting here waiting for my stamina to refresh so I can unlock the content that's actually interesting and challenging, and that's just a little tedious. And I downloaded Fire Emblem Heroes, and it's basically the same thing on top of being a character-based gacha. And on top of that, my wife has much better luck at the character gacha than I ever have. And so I just feel like I'm better off playing the game vicariously through her because she has better people than me. And pretending like I did it myself because I'm giving her moral support. So anyway,
there you go.
I was pretty excited to get my name up on the Hall of Fame. It'll be up tomorrow, I think, because I beat it just like a day or so ago. The deadline for beating it is tomorrow, I think. But it's not as exciting as I thought it is because it's actually really easy to hack Record Keeper in a way that's basically impossible for them to know about. So there's a lot of people who very, very clearly like so Nemesis in this version, it's a themed battle where you're supposed to bring characters from 5 different Final Fantasy games, and his stats become like impossibly high if you bring more than 2 characters from the same realm at any difficulty level for the fight. And one of the first people to show up on the Hall of Fame brought 4 characters from Final Fantasy III, I think, which should make the fight basically impossible, not just because his stats are ridiculous, but because those characters just don't have the right skill set to beat that boss.
Wow.
So it seemed evident from, like, I shouldn't say that necessarily, because there's this one guy who's on the Record Keeper forums, who insists on using Galuf from Final Fantasy V for every fight, because he has a relic that makes him invulnerable, and that technically, if you're really cautious with your math crafting, makes it possible for him to beat basically any boss in the game, as long as the remainder of the team supports him. So he has a series called Galuf Solos Everything. And solos is in quotes, because usually he needs, like, a couple of other characters to come in and, like, provide limit break gauges for Galuf by providing support, or by, like, lowering the enemy stats by debuffing it, before he kills them off and then begins soloing things with Galuf. Yeah. So that guy actually got rejected. I think they thought he was hacking or something. He never made it onto the Hall of Fame, despite having video evidence and extensive documentation of how he was, like, beating everything with Galuf. So I don't know what their heuristic is for deciding if somebody's a hacker or not. Anyway,
they probably don't have a good one.
No, they don't. I mean, they don't care as long as people are paying money for the game that much. Anyway, besides that, excuse me, I started playing Dragon Quest VIII for the 3DS. It's in the same vein as Xenoblade Chronicles, where I bought it originally for the console, and I never really quite made it to the end. But on a handheld, I'm much more likely, since I can be more flexible with the amount of time I play, to, like, actually get to it. So I beat Xenoblade Chronicles on the 3DS over a long period of time. I never got more than halfway through Dragon Quest VIII when I had it on the PS2, despite carrying my PS2 with me all the time whenever I used to travel.
Well, it's a long game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of JRPGs, so it was easy to let, like, this particular game fall off the wagon. But it's the only mainline Dragon Quest game I haven't finished. I'm hoping to do it now. They did a lot of interesting things. They added a picture-taking side quest that you can track over the course of the entire game to make the initial parts of the game that I've already played less boring. Since I'm retreading ground, but now I have these new little optional objectives to take care of. They made the random encounters like Dragon Quest IX, where they're not random anymore. You can just see them on the screen, which is a major update to JRPGs that a lot of series have adopted that I really appreciate.
Yeah, it really annoys me when games still do random battles.
Yep. So Dragon Quest VIII doesn't do that anymore. They also have chests that spawn randomly on the world map, and they refresh once a real-life day. So it encourages you not to play for, like, tremendous periods of time. It encourages you to play every day. And they have things like money in them and, like, basic equipment. So the older Dragon Quest games, they used to be kind of inventory management puzzles, where the game doesn't give you a lot of money, and you have to think very carefully about what equipment you want to buy, or you have to grind a lot to afford the best equipment every time you get to a new area. But since the blue chests in Dragon Quest VIII give you a decent amount of gold, you can usually buy most of what you need to equip your party without spending a lot of time. Yep.
So, I wanted to ask you, since you've beaten every single mainline Dragon Quest game, even the early ones, right?
Even the what?
The early ones, 1 through 4.
So I beat 1 through 3 on the Game Boy, using the Game Boy Color remakes. Sure. I did not. I played them initially on the NES when they came out via Blockbuster rental, but I was not able to beat them.
Okay. The reason why I ask is I've always really wanted to get into this series. The one that I've first majorly tried to get through was 9, and then I just kind of fell off. Mm-hmm. And then I have all the DS ones and 3DS ones. So then I started on 7 again because I heard the story was really good. And I heard that it was a fantastic remake, and it was kind of a really special thing that we were able to even get a localization of it.
Nice.
So I did start that, and I like it a lot. But for the early versions of the game, or the early installments of the game, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on if I wanted to go back and do 1 through 3, what versions I should play. I was thinking about doing the fan-translated versions of the SNES versions, but I just wanted to hear what you had to say.
So, as I understand, a big difference between all I know about the Game Boy versions of 1 and 2 is that the experience curve was managed a little bit compared to the initial game, so that you don't have to. You have to be, I think, in Dragon Quest 1, you mandatorily have to be about level 20 or 21. Otherwise, it's mathematically impossible to beat the final boss. The only thing I know about the remakes of the game is that they increase the experience monsters give, so you don't just sit there for 20 hours grinding to level 21. And it's actually pretty easy to get to level 30. I think Dragon Quest 2 is the same way. Otherwise, they're pretty tight remakes. At least the Game Boy Color version is. The Game Boy Color version of Dragon Quest III, I think, is descended from the SNES version. And it's... they're not too different. I enjoyed the Game Boy Color remake because it had like a medallion collecting side quest where all the enemies had a chance of dropping a medal, and if you had all of them at the end, you could access the post-game dungeon. So that fulfilled my... I think I had beaten Pokemon Red by that point, so that took over my collectathon maniac, slot.
I see.
Yeah,
sure.
Before, or maybe that was after Pokemon. I played Pokemon Gold. Anyway, it was in that same vein where I just wanted to collect all the medallions for all the enemies.
I heard the Game Boy Color version of 3 was excellent. So
yeah, I was surprised that it had the fight animations. That they had that on Game Boy Color. They were really smooth, and as someone who had been playing Game Boy for a long time, it was one of the best looking Game Boy games I'd ever played. I don't know if it's better than the translated Super Famicom version, but it's still an excellent version of the game. The best game to play is probably one of the DS Dragon Quests.
Sure.
Because 4, 5, and 6 all have excellent storylines, and the remakes are fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure I can't go wrong with any of the ones that came out on the DS or 3DS. Apparently everybody likes all of those entries. So.
All right. So anyway, that's my Dragon Quest story. The only other thing I've been doing all week is watching a ridiculous amount of wrestling, because last weekend was WrestleMania weekend, yeah, and WrestleMania weekend is really like a 5-day extravaganza that begins on Friday with the Hall of Fame and continues until Tuesday. Wrestling is one of the only television programs where the season premiere basically follows the day after the season finale. So WrestleMania by itself is exciting in its own way, but the day after, when they have the Raw after WrestleMania on national television, is usually when they debut a whole bunch of new characters, start a whole bunch of new storylines, have people return. Then the Tuesday, now they also do SmackDown Live, so that's a whole other set of storylines because they're considered separate shows now. So it was just a wrestling smorgasbord from Friday to Tuesday. The one thing I want to touch on, which is sort of tangential to WrestleMania, which is a developing story that's been going on in parallel to this, is that it's become sort of more evident. I mean, I talked a little bit before about how wrestling is a big carny business. And there's this guy, JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield, I think is his stage name. He's sort of notorious for being the backstage enforcer. He was legendary for stories that came out of biographies that wrestlers were publishing about the bullying that he was doing. He would literally just walk up to people in the shower and start pushing them around. He would he would steal all the stuff out of their hotel rooms if they didn't buy him beer. And yeah, so now he's retired. Now he's an announcer. And they put him on SmackDown with this guy they brought in called Mauro Ranallo, who was an amazing breath of fresh air and the best announcer they've hired in WWF in years. From outside. Their developing announcers at NXT were also very good, but Mauro is one of the best hires they've had in several years since Jim Ross retired. So they put him on the same show, and then about a month before WrestleMania, Mauro disappeared. He just stopped appearing on television. The story started developing that it turned out Mauro had bipolar disorder, and they believed that JBL's bullying still triggered a depressive episode, and he left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so the wrestling industry right now, they have this, like, relationship with ESPN. Like, wrestling is not as popular. Like, the viewership isn't there where it used to be back in, like, the Stone Cold and the Rock era. But they have, like, these really favorable relationships with companies like ESPN that they never had before, with family-friendly companies like Coca-Cola for advertising, like Kay Jewelers. I was talking to Pyro about how they had an advertisement for Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood, which I'd never seen before. In wrestling, so they're like courting a lot of family-friendly advertisers, but they have these guys backstage, you know, who are just like brutalizing the wrestlers, and this like old school mentality that if you can't take a joke, even if it's at your significant personal expense, you need to get out of the business. And I'm kind of happy these things are starting to be brought to light, because the business is nobody is being helped by these people being in positions of power in this business, and
it's not an old boys club anymore.
Yeah,
like nothing should be like that anymore.
Right. So I mentioned previously Dave Meltzer, like the #1 wrestling journalist, basically called ESPN out so badly that Jonathan Coachman, who's the primary ESPN commentator in wrestling, actually quit covering wrestling. Wow. So he mentioned that they didn't want to talk. So Coachman, he talked about how they didn't want to cover the JBL rumors because that's all they are. Rumors. And so Meltzer comes out and he just tweets back at him, literally, you know, your announcer has been missing for a month. Nobody's seen him in weeks. That's not a rumor. Like, he's gone. He didn't drop off the face of the earth. Like, what's wrong with you? And immediately after that, Coachman quit.
Wow.
So things are starting to happen, and these stories are starting to come out, and I'm hoping, like, it will be a big blow for wrestling, and they'll probably lose advertisers. You know, the same vein as, like, PewDiePie and his problem. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping the business comes out stronger and full of better people than they have right now.
Yeah, I know. And it should be a place where it isn't, you know, people shouldn't get bullied at their place of work. I mean that's really, I mean, that's a reasonable assumption that you're going to go into work and you're not going to be harassed.
I mean, it makes people afraid to succeed because you don't want to be noticed.
Correct.
And
yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
So of course, I've got a lot to talk about in wrestling, but I'll save the rest for a fuller topic. And as a teaser for the Recon podcast, which all of you watching this now should watch 2 days later when it comes out. And then, Vice, how are you doing this week?
Well, so I'm still continuing with Breath of the Wild. It's kind of a job
that you're not getting paid for.
I'm getting paid, but like in soul orbs.
Literal soul orbs. Your internal soul is becoming stronger with the.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played a game that I wanted to 100% and wanted to continue like going at since like Doom last year. I think I've mentioned that. Mm-hmm. Doom, I wanted to do every challenge, like upgrade every weapon, do everything that I could. And this game is very much the same. It's a different type of game, but it's addictive in the same sort of way. And it's just a ton of fun. I have completed all the Divine Beast quests, so I'm done all of the mainline dungeons, as you would say, for this game. However, I'm still doing side quests. I'm not going to 100% this game because it's that would include getting all the Korok seeds and also taking pictures of every single individual item in the game, which I don't have the patience for. And I don't think there's like a ton of. I think I heard the Korok seed like reward for getting them all is like one of the dumbest things of all time.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what it is, but
just don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't care, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Even looking up a guide to get all the Kurok seeds would still be really tedious. So I'm just gonna pick them up as I go along. Go ahead.
Part of me feels that 100%ing this game is getting enough of the seeds that you can buy all your upgrades, and I don't know how the pictures work, but maybe taking all the pictures. But like in terms of seeds, it's not getting all of them. It's getting all the ones you need, which is less than half of them.
Right.
Wow.
So I will say that I love the idea of taking all the pictures. It triggers the same sort of like enjoyment for me as getting all the medals in Dragon Quest III, like I was talking about, or collecting all the Pokemon. Like it symbolizes that I've been everywhere and done everything, because doing that will bring you to encounter everything that you need to take a picture of naturally. I will also say that I like that basically everybody can have a different experience playing this game. So, like Vyse, I have the Master Sword, but I haven't even started a single Divine Beast quest. And I sort of did that on purpose, because I've heard that people react differently to you if you come carrying the Master Sword all over the place. And I kind of want to see what the different dialogue is, so I tried really hard not to start any of the storyline whatsoever before I was able to get my hands on the Master Sword. But I had to do a little bit, just to get the camera to take pictures of things. Otherwise, I'd have to go all the way around the world all over again to...
Mm-hmm.
Since
I just like the concept that you're just a schmo without the sword, and like people are just like, oh, you're just some dude, and we're waiting for the savior to come.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, the game is still great. I've cheated a little bit and looked up a couple things that I was getting frustrated with. So I looked up good places to attack the great dragons. Because they are difficult to hit with arrows unless you are at the right spot in their flying patterns. So I found that I needed to look that up. I also looked up just a couple location kind of things. Nothing too weird, but like just so I wasn't slogging through a couple things. But that's pretty much it. I mean, as far as main things go, I pretty much figured everything else out on my own, which I was happy about, and I've been enjoying it just as much. My idea is that I want to get all of the shrines before moving on to defeating Ganon, and I want to do all the side quests. So, or all the side quests that I could find. I don't know whether I'm gonna go through like a list that somebody has of every single one and check them off, but I'm going to clear my my adventure log. That's for sure.
Makes sense. So you briefly touched on this. The great dragons, I think, encountering them for the first time might have been the coolest experience I've had in the game so far. Like it's the neat one that's, I think, in the desert. I play the game by basically allowing myself to be distracted by everything. And if I see something, even if I have an objective and it's halfway across the map, if I see like something that looks like it might have a Korok seed or something that looks like conspicuous in any way, I'll just veer off, and like I said on the previous podcast I discussed this, I'll wind up like 50 miles away from where I thought I was going to be. But I was sort of like riding on a horse in the desert or something like that, and I saw and I was trying to choose which way to go on a fork in the road, and I turned to the left and I see this like giant dragon flying at me. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna go to the right. And then later I was in a waterfall in the southeast region, and it was raining, and and that's scary, because if it starts thundering in Breath of the Wild and you're wearing electric equipment, you can get electrocuted. So I took off all my metal equipment,
Metallica,
yeah, and I put my wood stuff on, and I was like walking through this like river, this shallow river, and I'm still getting shocked, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, why am I getting shocked? Am I wearing something that's metal, and I don't realize why? And I look up, and there's a dragon like flying like 20 feet above me, and it's like just like raining thunder orbs on me, and they're hitting me, just like it doesn't care about me at all. Just it being close to me is a threat to my life. And I was like, well, now or never, and I like shot an arrow at it, and it dropped a horn, and then I never saw it again.
That's actually Feroche, the green dragon, which you're talking about, is the one that I most want to get into contact with at the moment, because his horns help you upgrade the hero tunic.
Nice.
So I need 2 of his horns in order to upgrade all of the go forward in that line. I unlocked all of the Great Fairy fountains as well, so I'm working on getting the really hard items to upgrade all of my inventory. So that's another thing I wanted to do before I moved on, is I'm having a lot of fun upgrading my inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do that and do all the subquests and do all the shrines. The shrines, I'm about 2/3 of the way through, so I thought I had a lot of them. And there's 120, and I have about 80 of them, which like blows my mind that there's still like 1/3 of them out there somewhere, which is hilarious to me.
Some of the quests to find the shrines are extremely cool, and
yeah. I did one that I really liked recently, where there was like a long chain of events in order to unlock it. It was in the Rito village.
Mm-hmm.
You first of all have to find little girl Rito, who is singing by one of the shrine tables that you need to do an activity at in order to open. I guess it's a pedestal, whatever, and you have to go collect her sisters that are singing with her, or supposed to be singing with her, but the other sisters are trying to appease another sister who is really hungry, and you have to make her food. But you have to figure out the recipe to make her food. And so there's like a long chain of events, and then you finally get them all together, and then they tell you what the clue is in order to unlock that shrine.
Nice.
And it turns out that you need to use that Karok leaf in order to on these stones in order to make it whistle. And it's just really great. And then it's not one of those shrines that just gives you the orb. You have to go in and do an activity as well. So it's just a lot of fun. The game is super charming. I did the kind of the optional side quest. It's not even like something that shows up in your adventure log, where you can get the Lord of the Horses, which is he's like this mystical gigantic. He's like a mystical horse that is near. Like this his name is Satori, I believe, and a lot of people think that he's a tribute to Satoru Iwata. So it's pretty neat.
Nice.
And there's also like a character that tells you about him that looks like Satoru Iwata. He even has like the type of glasses he wore, and he just looks similar. So I thought that was a lot of fun. But you can't, of course, board him. Yeah, you have to let him go. So it's kind of cool that the game gives you these cool things to do that you can't, that are ephemeral. Like you can't hold on to that horse. Even it would be really cool if you could, because he has like he never runs out of boost. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm gonna continue with it and keep playing it. Kind of reminds me of Vice City back in the day, when you used to look for like hidden packages a lot of times. It's just fun like that. And keeping with Zelda, I actually went back and played Triforce Heroes again. I've actually never I've beaten a lot of the mainline Zeldas. I've beaten like all the console ones, and most of the portable ones. I actually more like about half of them. But I've never beaten any of the multiplayer ones. I really like the GameCube one, but it's extremely inconvenient to play. And it's a shame, because the game's a lot of fun. I someday want to beat that, but I had actually Dan Carew, Denallen, one of our recent guests, was playing, wanted to play Triforce Heroes with me and his girlfriend, so we played it online yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot of really bad design decisions that hamper your ability to play the game, just like the GameCube one. But the game is fun itself, and it's a lot better if you played in front of a laptop with Skype. I couldn't imagine playing it without it. It wouldn't be nearly as fun. So
you're saying basically like you have to make up for Nintendo's own shortcomings in developing an online game.
Yeah, it's really a shame because the game could be a lot better.
They've
like
never
if it
been
were on
great
the
with
Switch,
online.
If it were on the Switch right now, and it didn't require you to have 3 people, which is a weird number. Actually, the GameCube Four Swords Adventures is fine one player. Like it makes up for it. But Triforce Heroes is not a good one player experience, and it's not a 2-player experience at all, which is really dumb. I don't really understand it, but it's cool. But you need to play that game a lot in order to grind for materials. I don't know how far I'm ever going to get in the game because you need to play it a lot to get anywhere in it. So, but it's fun. Cool diversion, and I want to play it a little bit more.
Nice.
I did play Binding of Isaac on the Switch, as I mentioned before. This is real quick. I really like the way it controls on the Switch. So you can use it like dual sticks, like most other dual stick shooters. But I actually find that the game works best if you use the analog stick on the left and the face buttons to shoot on the right. And it plays really well like that. In fact, I think it plays probably the most intuitively that I've ever experienced, because you can only shoot in 4 cardinal directions in Isaac unless you have a special ability, I think. Is that correct, OldManStompy?
I believe it is now correct as of the most recent version of the game. But until then, okay. I had the same experience as you playing on the Vita when the base game was released on the Vita, to use the left analog stick and the face buttons instead of the second analog stick.
Yeah, because the left analog stick actually, controls the speed at which Isaac moves around, mm-hmm. which it actually is more intuitive than the original version of the game with the keyboard.
Right.
So it does control how fast he's going. So I do think that that's a really good way to play the game. So I just played it a little bit. I'm nowhere near as good as you or Lotus Prince at it. Nowhere near as into it, but I do like playing it. I also wanted to do a quick mention that I'm a big fan of Falcom games, and there's some two that are coming out that are a pretty big deal. So Trails in the Sky 3, Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky 3 is through some act of God actually coming out in the West.
Only on PC, though, I believe.
Only on PC, but I am not splitting hairs about it. Yeah. I was never going to play the PSP version of 2 or 3, even if 3 was going to release. I have the PSP version of 1 because I didn't have the foresight to think that they might release the PC version of 1. Mm-hmm. But I'd much rather play them on PC, all 3 of them. But through some act of God, that game's coming out here, and only in less than a month, I think, now. So I'm super excited about that. Xseed is, of course, bringing that to us. But in a weird twist of fate, Xseed is not releasing the new Ys game. I believe it's not... I think it might be... I forget what company's doing it, but it's not Xseed for some reason. I forget who's doing it. But I find it unusual that the mainline Ys game.
So I beat Trails 1, I believe, in Japanese, and then I beat Trails 1 again when it came out in English on Vita. But I want to play it on PC, and I'm kind of done with it. I don't want to play it again. And the other thing is they're long games, so no matter how much I want to play Trails 1, 2, and 3, and the Cold Steel ones, and the other series that they have, they're just way too long. I do look forward to Ys. Did Exceed do the what was whatever the number 7 was, the most recent one? Is it just called E7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was Salsetta that they did after that,
Okay.
which is a remake of 4.
Yeah.
So the remake of 4 is the most recent one in the West. 8, which is one of the best like dumb Japanese names, Lacrimosa of Dana, or Dana, I guess maybe. So that one's being localized by NIS, Nipponichi,
okay.
which is weird. But it's kind of funny because Falcom Games for the longest time had been championed by Exceed and their one of their translators, Tom Lipschultz, and they've basically released every Falcom game that they could have, and then some. So the only kind of exception was Gurumin, which was localized by Mastiff, of all companies. But I'm excited for all of them, those two to come out, because I'm huge Falcom fan, and I will do a recon topic on Falcom games eventually, but I just wanted to mention that briefly. And I also wanted to mention briefly that I started watching Game of Thrones. I know I'm behind everybody by many years, by like 10 years at this point.
It's actually okay, because season 7 is coming out sometime in, I think, June or July. And then season 8 will be the last season, which is next year. So it's actually not bad now, because you're coming in near the end. So depending on how often you watch it, if you can spread out all 7 seasons throughout another year, then you can basically watch all of them and not have to worry about like cliffhangers and whatnot, because you'll just watch them all through. Yeah,
so I mean, if anybody was wondering, like, why did I wait for so long? First of all, I didn't have HBO. I know that's not a good excuse, because
neither did I.
But I actually have HBO now, and I had like some free time last night, so I actually just decided to do it. I originally was going to wait. Okay. I originally was going to wait, but what ended up happening was I wanted to read all the books first, but then I realized I just didn't have the time for it,
Yeah, same here. I think I started watching season 1 with my parents, of all people. If you've watched it, you know that that's not something you really always feel comfortable watching with your parents. So I was thinking I wanted to read it, and I actually have the first 4 books, but I got halfway through the first one, and I just felt like this was way too long. But also, it's about the whole funny thing about having HBO. My parents have HBO, so I would watch it with them every Sunday. And then when I was starting to watch it not with them, because I moved farther away, that I couldn't watch it with them, it was kind of silly because they have HBO Go. So technically I could log into their account and watch it online, but that's too much work. It's actually a lot easier just to download it and hope you don't get an email from HBO saying that we're going to shut down your internet.
Yeah. So my parents, they watch the television show, and I've read the books. I read up through the end of book 5, and I figured I'll just read the last couple books when they come out, and then maybe later I'll watch the show. But now the books are never out, and the series is going to have its own conclusion well before probably Winds of Winter ever comes out. So my parents, they were watching the show, and they were watching some episode where a character my mom really liked died. That was after the end of the books, and they asked me like, well, they didn't call me OldManStompy, but they're like, hey, you read the books. What happens? Does this character survive? Do they bring him back to life or something? And I was like, I don't know. Like, this is all unfinished ground to me.
Uncharted territory, yeah.
I didn't even know that character died. That could be a spoiler for all I know. Like, maybe he's going to use the writers of the show to write the rest of the books for him. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah, that for all we know, that might be the only conclusion we ever get.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've never watched a single episode of the show, but if Winds of Winter never comes out, you never know. George R.R. Martin is not a young guy, and he is not a healthy-looking guy. So, I honestly have no idea if we will ever see the 6th or 7th books. So I might as well start watching the show once it's done.
Yeah. Well, with having said that, we can have a larger topic on that sometime in the future as I watch the show. But I did want to do my weigh-in. And another week of samesies here. I really need to get on the ball here, because I actually have quite a few people in my life that are making much faster progress on it than me on my weight, on their weight, and I just I'm not taking it as seriously as I should. I think so. I think I'm going to change some of my habits here. So we'll keep moving on, and hopefully I'll get below 220 very soon.
Yeah, good luck.
So having said that, I do want to go on to questions here. So we have one from Andy Offheim, or Opheim. I have a challenge for the three of you. Think of the worst games you've ever played. Now think of one good thing to say about it. And he means, for example, Ride to Hell's Retribution's music, Sonic Boom's not the worst Sonic game ever made, and then he gives us a little good luck here.
I honestly, I think this is tougher more because if I felt like a game was shitty, that it probably didn't stick in my mind that long to even think about what I liked about it. But one that came up that I could think of just off the top of my head, I really like the Mana games. But there was a Mana game, I forget which one it was, Dawn of Mana, that came out for PS2, I think it was.
Oh yeah, that game's
back when I was in college, I think I downloaded a bunch of games and I started playing that, and I must have played it for maybe an hour, and I'm like, this game sucks. And my friend was like, you know what, I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to beat it. He played it for another like 5 or 6 hours, and he's like, I can't do it. But if I'm trying to find something good, just like other Mana games, it has pretty good music. The style of the game was actually pretty good, like the art style. And the only other thing I have to say that was good about it was that it had Mana in the title.
So yeah, that's not even a good thing for me, because as much as I respect that people love that series, I have never played one that I've liked.
I think my favorite one is Legend of Mana, and that and I think the second and third one are really the I think up to the, like, I guess if you consider Legend of Mana 4, then I find them all really good up to that, and then they just got pretty bad because they tried to be too experimental.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever play? Was it Children of Mana?
Never played Children. Is that the one where you like have armies, or is that a different one?
It's like an RTS game.
Yeah, I didn't. I think I played it for a little bit, and I'm like, this is not a Mana game to me.
Children of Mana is more of a grindy game. Heroes of Mana is the one you're thinking of. That's an RTS.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
supposed to take place in the same timeline as Seiken Densetsu 3. And it has like the same mythology and the same like characters in it, sort of, but the story doesn't like logically follow from anything that happened in SD3. If we're doing Mana games, I will totally agree about Dawn of Mana. I will take this one step to the left, since on the podcast previously I've discussed that there are games that I play and don't like the entire time through. But it's pretty rare, and philosophically I try to look at things sort of the same way Vice does, that you try to make the most of, and try to look for the best and try to find things to appreciate, because it's a good life lesson to learn to find things to appreciate in unpleasant experiences, even if you're doing them to yourself by playing a video game, optionally. So I talked previously about Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light, about how it was probably the worst game I actually made it to the end of. So it's a game I feel... I will agree the music was really good. I think that'll show up a lot in games that people actually finish for one reason, because music tends not to be correlated all that much with the quality of the gameplay. Like a bad music can make or break a game, but if the game has like fundamental design decisions, usually it doesn't translate to whoever wrote the soundtrack. So they tend to be really uncorrelated. Like, I noticed that all the really grindy Korean MMORPGs have really good music. But really bad gameplay. Yeah.
Or at least the gameplay isn't something that could stay fun when you're doing it over and over. Like, there have been several Korean MMOs that I played when I was in college that were really fun for a day, and then when I realized I'm going to have to do this over and over and over again, I was thinking this is not worth my time at all.
Right. So I'm thinking specifically of like MapleStory and Tree of Savior, which my wife played for a while, and I remember walking in and thinking the music was really great, but watching her play the game, thinking like, I would never want to play this game, and listening to the music is already as much like psychic benefit as I'm ever going to get like observing this game. So I'm basically done with it now.
It's like Ragnarok Online. I mean, I loved the game when I played it, and when I played private servers, because they increased the experience rate. But in the normal game, I would have more fun listening to the soundtrack that I actually downloaded because it was so great, the music. But the grind was not. No, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Vice,
so,
what about you?
Yeah, my pick. I mean, this for longtime listeners. Of my worst game of all time is Stonekeep 2 for the Wii.
Oh God.
Because it's. I'm a firm believer that your least favorite game or like the worst games should also have the same kind of connotation that the best game of all time does, but in the opposite way. So it has to have a connection that almost offends you. Like it can't be just a bad game. It has to offend you on some level. And it has to like really get at you in particular. And that game, because I was waiting for it and had been, checking up on it for years, and then I was surprised that it actually ever came out, and then it released as such a big, gigantic, unplayable piece of shit, that is going to be, my least favorite game of all time because of the connection that I have with it. The only thing that I can say positive about it is that it came out. I'm kind of remiss to say anything else good about it because you literally can't control the game or play it or move forward in it on purpose. Like you literally have to, accidentally do the motions that you need to move forward by accident.
And it's funny because like my definition of worst game would be a game that's so bad that I couldn't even play it, because there are a lot of bad games, but they're so bad or that they're like actually good. So I don't know if you ever heard of you've probably both heard of the Simple Series games.
Sure.
Right. So Onichanbara and Zombie
like Earth Defense Force,
Zombie Ambulance, I think one of them, or something like that, where you're an ambulance, you have to kill zombies, and they're not great games. Like their gameplay is actually pretty fun overall, I guess you could say, but they're bad enough.
They're slop.
And they're silly enough that you're like, I kind of want to keep playing this because the graphics aren't the best, the music is almost non-existent at times, but they're just silly enough that I want to keep playing. But I wouldn't consider that a bad game. I would agree with you in the sense that a worst game has to just be just nothing forgiving.
Yeah. And there's literally the only reason why this still sticks with me is because it offends me so much that it's kind of special because of it. It's something no other game really has topped since then because it just offends me so.
But if you think about this from a historical standpoint, like games, I was talking about this with a friend of mine a little while ago, that if you look at the original Final Fantasy and how many things in that game just don't work, and how many bugs that game has, and how many like obviously there was something about that game that really spoke to people. Like the experience was different, or like the bugs, like they existed, and if the game came out today, the Final Fantasy series would never exist. That game would get raked across the coals by Twitter or by gaming message forums, and it probably wouldn't sell very well. Assuming that it was made like a mobile game or something with the relevant graphics upgrades. I can also think of Deadly Premonition as a game that I can barely play because every time I try to get anywhere in it, I experience a bug that like stops one of the side quests from completing. But that game is considered to be a cult classic because the storyline is so unique. So like a game that's like objectively bad in a lot of different ways, but like has one thing, can become a cult classic, and in the case of Final Fantasy, can, like, if it gets a second chance, can become a cultural phenomenon.
Well, you also have to remember that the time period in which that game came out in Japan, the attitude towards games was much different. The expectations were a lot different. So I'll just give you they had a cult of people that at the time had enough spending money to buy every game that was being released, essentially. So like a lot of people, when the Famicom games were first being released, almost everybody would have all the same games, including the bad ones. Right. And they grew an affection for games that were bad. That's why we have the term kusoge from them. There's one particular game...
Which means shit game, if anyone doesn't know Japanese.
yeah, shit game. so Iki is a infamously terrible Sunsoft port of an arcade game. It's a garbage game. There's also a game like Spelunker, which is a terrible game. It's not fun, but people love it because it was so hard. It's just like one of those games that just gave people such a challenge, and they didn't have anything else to do at the time, so they just sunk all their time into it and trying to like figure out its idiosyncrasies. So like games like Final Fantasy, like the original Final Fantasy, kind of would get a passing grade because it just had some kind of charm.
It was less shitty than the other games that were out.
Well, I don't even know about that, but like they're really, if you take a look at all the RPGs on the system, there really aren't too many better other than the Dragon Quest games.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, just think about the original NES's output for RPGs. I can't think of anything other than the Dragon Quest games that's better than Final Fantasy. I can't.
It's tough.
I mean, there's really nothing.
So I understand the philosophy because I have friends who throw parties to watch Neil Breen movies. So
sure.
And that is not a game, but that is something that I cannot think of anything positive to say whatsoever, except maybe the intent of the creator.
Yeah, and he has a lot of heart.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's up there with Tommy Wiseau and just has a ton of heart and puts in everything, his all, into something that and completely fails at it every single time.
Right.
But did you guys want to add anything else here? I think we
I think we covered
went over this pretty good. Okay,
I'm good.
Okay, did you have a game that you wanted to go over?
Another game? I mean,
yeah.
do you want to talk about 4 Heroes of Light some more? Because I love talking with you about 4 Heroes of Light.
I think we'll spare the vitriol from the audience here.
All right.
So that's all we have for the show on this week. I want to thank all of our fans, with that being our question contributor, Andy Oppheim, for contributing this week. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own on our YouTube and SoundCloud pages. And while there, give us a thumbs up and say hi to Lotus Prince as he's crying and lamenting why he's not on his own show. Please give us likes, 5-star ratings on iTunes as well. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps us keep the show going. We can catch us on Thursdays on our sister podcast, Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in pop culture. And finally, you can find me as VyseTheBold, VyseTheBold, on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, and Twitter.
Are we still doing that?
No,
so
we're not
you
doing
can probably
that.
find me at PyroJackFrost or Cloud08540. If you look for me on most things, you'll find me. If not, I'm either not there or I don't want to be found.
Yeah. I have basically the same philosophy. I'm OldManStompy on everything. If I'm not OldManStompy on that, either I don't use it or I don't want to interface with other human beings. If we're doing plugs, I just wrapped up recording a Let's Play with Minty Mitz and Lotus Prince that I don't know when it'll be coming out, but it'll be our first Corrective Consciousness branded Let's Play series, so we'll look forward to that coming soon. I'll leave it to Lotus to reveal what the game is, although he's talked about it before.
I'm really excited for that. Excellent. So, with that having said, thanks for listening this week. We will catch you on Thursday on Recon.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.